I'm going to say something right now that's going to make absolutely everyone furious, and I don't care because someone needs to have the guts to say what we're all thinking but nobody wants to admit out loud. Becky Lynch announcing her pregnancy live on Raw last night was simultaneously one of the most beautiful, emotional, genuine moments in WWE history and also one of the most frustrating, heartbreaking announcements for wrestling fans who've been desperately waiting for her comeback run. And before you come at me in the comments saying I'm being insensitive, saying I'm putting wrestling above a human being's right to start a family, saying I should be happy for her instead of disappointed, let me be crystal clear about something. I am happy for Becky Lynch. I'm thrilled that she's expanding her family. I'm excited for her and Seth Rollins and their daughter to have another member joining them. Becky deserves all the happiness in the world after everything she's sacrificed for this business. But you know what else is true? We just lost one of the greatest performers of this generation right when she was hitting her stride again, right when the women's division needed her most, right when storylines were being built around her that could have defined the next year of programming. And anyone pretending they're not at least a little bit devastated by that announcement is lying to themselves or they're not really invested in women's wrestling the way they claim to be. Because Becky Lynch isn't just another wrestler. She's not just another name on the roster. She's the man. She's the woman who broke down every door, shattered every glass ceiling, main event WrestleMania, and fundamentally changed what it means to be a woman in WWE. And now, for the second time in her prime, pregnancy is taking her away from us when she still had so much left to give. So yes, I'm conflicted. Yes, I'm emotional. And yes, we need to talk about what this means for WWE, for the women's division, for Becky's legacy, and for all the storylines that just got blown up by this announcement. Let me take you through exactly what happened last night because the way this unfolded was genuinely shocking and nobody saw it coming despite all the speculation and rumors that had been circulating online for the past few weeks. Raw opened with Becky Lynch's music hitting and the crowd went absolutely insane because Becky has been on fire lately. Her recent run has been incredible. She's been cutting the best promos of her career. Her matches have been consistently great. She's been working with younger talent and elevating everyone she touches. The women's division has felt important and vital largely because Becky Lynch has been at the center of it, reminding everyone why she became the biggest star in women's wrestling in the first place. So when her music hit to open the show, everyone expected another blistering promo, another challenge issued to whoever she's feuding with, another segment that would get people talking and set the tone for the rest of the night. Becky walked out and something was immediately different. She wasn't doing her usual intense walk to the ring. She wasn't playing to the crowd with her signature gestures. She looked contemplative, almost nervous, which is not a word anyone typically associates with Becky Lynch. She got in the ring and grabbed a microphone and the crowd was chanting her name, completely unaware that their world was about to get rocked. And Becky stood there for a moment just taking it all in, listening to that ovation, and you could see her getting emotional before she'd even said a single word. That's when some people in the crowd started to sense something was off. The energy shifted from excitement to concern because why would Becky Lynch be on the verge of tears before even speaking? She started talking and her voice was shaking slightly, which again is not normal for Becky, who's always been one of the most confident speakers in all of wrestling. She thanked the fans for their support over the years. She talked about her journey in WWE, about becoming the man, about main eventing WrestleMania, about winning championships and making history. She talked about how much wrestling means to her and how it's been her entire life for over 20 years. And then she paused and the arena got quiet because everyone realized this wasn't a normal promo. This was something significant. This was Becky Lynch about to say something that would change everything. And then she said it. 7 words that immediately sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. I'm pregnant. I'm going to be a mom again. The crowd reaction was interesting because it went through several phases in rapid succession. First there was stunned silence as people processed what they just heard. Then there was applause because that's the appropriate response when someone announces they're having a baby. But underneath that applause you could hear disappointment, you could feel the collective realization that this meant Becky was leaving again, that we were losing her for at least a year, maybe longer. The cheers were genuine, but they were also bittersweet, and anyone claiming otherwise wasn't actually there or wasn't paying attention to the actual mood in that arena. Becky continued talking and you could see her fighting back tears. She said this pregnancy wasn't planned, but it's a blessing and she's excited about it even though the timing is complicated. She said she knows this means stepping away from WWE again and she knows people will be disappointed, but this is something she has to do for herself and for her family. She said she'll be back eventually because wrestling is in her blood and she's not done yet, but right now she needs to focus on this next chapter of her life. She thanked WWE for being understanding and supportive. She thanked her opponents and the women's roster for pushing her to be better. And then she thanked Seth Rollins and got really emotional talking about him and their family, which was touching but also gut-wrenching because you could hear the conflict in her voice between wanting this baby and not wanting to leave wrestling. The camera cut to backstage where several wrestlers were watching on monitors and you could see genuine shock on their faces. Some were crying. Some looked devastated. Because everyone in that locker room knows what Becky Lynch means to the women's division and everyone knows this creates a massive hole that's going to be nearly impossible to fill. Charlotte Flair looked stunned. Bianca Belair was crying. Even some of the men who've worked with Becky over the years looked emotional because that's the impact Becky has on everyone around her. Becky finished her announcement by saying she's relinquishing whatever title she was holding or exiting whatever storyline she was in. I don't even remember the specifics because I was too busy processing the bigger implications of what this means. She said she hopes people understand and support her decision. She said she loves the WWE universe and she'll miss being out there every week, but this is what's right for her life right now. And then her music hit and she left the ring to a standing ovation with tears streaming down her face and probably 90% of the arena also crying because this was heavy, this was real emotion, this wasn't a work or an angle, this was Becky Lynch the human being having to make an impossible choice between two things she loves. The show continued after that, but honestly nothing else mattered. That announcement overshadowed everything else that happened on Raw. Social media immediately exploded with reactions ranging from supportive and congratulatory to disappointed and frustrated to conspiracy theories about whether this is actually real or some elaborate work, which is insulting to suggest but inevitable in modern wrestling fandom where people assume everything is a storyline. Within an hour Becky Lynch was trending worldwide. Seth Rollins posted a statement confirming the news and expressing his excitement about their growing family, and every wrestling news outlet was running stories about Becky's pregnancy and what it means for WWE programming going forward. Let's talk about the immediate practical implications because they're significant and they're going to create problems that WWE needs to solve quickly. Whatever storyline Becky was involved in just got completely derailed. Whatever opponent she was building toward a match with just lost their biggest program. Whatever championship she was chasing or defending is now in limbo. The women's division loses its biggest star and most consistent performer right when they can least afford to lose her. Raw specifically loses one of its top attractions and one of the few people who consistently get strong reactions from the crowd every single week. WWE has been down this road before obviously. Becky's first pregnancy in 2020 forced her to relinquish the Raw Women's Championship and step away for over a year. That created an opportunity for other women to step up and fill the void, and some did successfully while others struggled. But that was during the pandemic era when everything was weird and crowds weren't even around for most of it. This is different. This is happening when WWE is running at full capacity with crowds back and business being strong. Losing Becky Lynch now hits differently and hurts more because she was in the middle of actively contributing to the show's success rather than stepping away during a down period. The question everyone's asking is who replaces Becky Lynch in terms of being the top-level star in the women's division who can carry storylines and deliver in big moments. Charlotte Flair is the obvious answer, but Charlotte has her own injury history and hasn't been used consistently lately. Bianca Belair is incredibly talented, but she's been somewhat stagnant character-wise and needs better booking to reach that next level. Rhea Ripley is a star, but she's on SmackDown. Liv Morgan has potential but hasn't been given the opportunities to truly break through. Becky was the complete package, and replacing her isn't as simple as just pushing someone else into her spot because nobody else has the complete skill set that Becky brings. There's also the business reality that needs to be acknowledged. Becky Lynch draws money. Her merchandise sells. Her segments get views. Her matches get ratings. Losing her for a year or more creates a financial impact on WWE's business that shouldn't be dismissed. I know some people will say that's callous or that wrestling companies shouldn't factor pregnancy into their business decisions, but let's be honest about the reality. WWE is a publicly traded company that answers to shareholders, and losing one of their top performers absolutely affects the bottom line. That doesn't mean they should pressure Becky to keep working or punish her for being pregnant, but it does mean they need to have serious conversations about how to maintain momentum in the women's division without their biggest star. The timing of this announcement is particularly brutal because we're heading into Royal Rumble season, which leads into WrestleMania season, which is WWE's most important time of year. Becky Lynch has been a centerpiece of WrestleMania before and was likely being considered for another major role this year. Whatever plans existed are now completely scrapped, and WWE Creative has to scramble to figure out new directions for not just Becky's spot on the card but for everyone who would have been involved in her orbit. That ripple effect touches multiple storylines and multiple performers and creates a domino effect of necessary changes. Let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about publicly but everyone is thinking privately. This is Becky's second pregnancy during what should be the prime of her career. She's 37 years old. She had her first child at 33. She'll be 38 when this baby is born and probably 39 or 40 before she's back wrestling regularly, if she comes back at all. Father Time is undefeated, and while Becky is in incredible shape and could probably wrestle into her 40s if she wants to, the reality is that every year away from wrestling makes coming back harder. Ring rust is real. Body changes during and after pregnancy. The business moves on and new stars emerge, and suddenly the landscape is completely different than when you left. When Becky came back from her first pregnancy, it took her a while to find her groove again. She tried a heel turn that didn't really work. She struggled with her character direction for several months. It wasn't until relatively recently that she rediscovered what made her special and started firing on all cylinders again. And now she has to step away again right when she'd recaptured that magic. It's heartbreaking from a fan perspective because we finally had the man back in full force and now we're losing her again potentially for even longer than last time. There's also the uncomfortable reality that WWE has historically not been great at handling pregnancies and returns from maternity leave. Sometimes they bring women back with huge fanfare and strong pushes. Other times women come back to nothing and have to claw their way back up the card. Becky's star power probably protects her from the worst-case scenario, but there's no guarantee she returns to the same spot she's leaving from, especially if other women have established themselves in her absence. WWE's attention span is short and their memory is shorter, and what matters is who's hot right now, not who was hot 18 months ago. The personal side of this can't be ignored either, even though some people will accuse me of being invasive for discussing it. Becky and Seth already have one child, and balancing wrestling careers with parenting has been challenging for both of them by their own admission. Adding a second child makes that exponentially more complicated. Somebody has to be home with the kids while the other one is on the road. Somebody has to make sacrifices in terms of their career to prioritize family. Historically in wrestling and in society generally, that burden falls more heavily on women than men. Seth can probably maintain his full-time wrestling schedule without much disruption. Becky's entire career is now on pause for the foreseeable future. That's not fair, but it's reality, and it's worth acknowledging when we discuss what this announcement means. I want to be clear again because I know how the internet works and I know people will deliberately misunderstand what I'm saying. I am genuinely happy for Becky Lynch and her family. Having a baby is a beautiful thing and nobody should ever be shamed or criticized for choosing to expand their family. Becky doesn't owe us anything. She doesn't owe WWE anything. She's already given this business more than most people do in their entire careers, and she's earned the right to make whatever decisions are best for her personal life without judgment from fans or media or anyone else. But being happy for Becky as a person and being disappointed as a fan of her work are not mutually exclusive emotions. I can hold both thoughts simultaneously. I can congratulate her on her pregnancy while also being devastated that we're losing one of the greatest performers of this generation right when she was doing some of the best work of her career. Wrestling fans are allowed to be selfish about wanting to see their favorites perform. That's what being a fan means. As long as that selfishness doesn't cross over into harassment or disrespect toward the actual human being making these life decisions, it's okay to express disappointment about the professional implications of someone stepping away. The broader conversation this brings up is about women's wrestling and pregnancy in general. This is Becky's second pregnancy during her prime years. Alexa Bliss just had a baby and stepped away. Naomi has discussed wanting to start a family. There are rumors about other women on the roster potentially being pregnant or planning pregnancies. And every time it happens, WWE loses a key performer from an already thin women's division. Men don't face this same reality. Men can have as many kids as they want without it affecting their careers. That's biological reality and there's no changing it, but it does create an inherent disadvantage for women in terms of career longevity and consistency. WWE could theoretically do more to support pregnant performers and make it easier for them to return to wrestling after giving birth. Better healthcare support, guaranteed positions upon return, storyline accommodations, childcare assistance when traveling. There are lots of options that could help minimize the career disruption that pregnancy causes. Whether WWE actually implements any of these things remains to be seen, but Becky's announcement should spark conversations about how wrestling companies can better support women who want both careers and families. The outpouring of support from the wrestling community has been largely positive, with most wrestlers past and present congratulating Becky and wishing her well. But you can also detect subtle disappointment in some of the responses, that sense of "this is wonderful news but also we're going to miss her so much" that permeates a lot of the reactions. Everyone understands this is complicated and creates mixed emotions for everyone involved. From a booking perspective, WWE now has to figure out how to fill the Becky-sized hole in their programming. Do they elevate someone new and use this as an opportunity to make a star? Do they rely on established names like Charlotte or Bianca to carry more of the load? Do they bring someone up from NXT earlier than planned? Do they shift focus to different women's storylines that don't require a singular top star? All of these options have pros and cons, and whatever they decide will significantly impact the direction of women's wrestling for the next year or more. There's also the question of whether Becky makes occasional appearances during her pregnancy, like cutting promos via satellite or showing up for major moments without physical involvement. That could help maintain her presence in people's minds and keep the door open for storylines when she eventually returns. Or maybe a clean break is better and she just completely steps away until she's ready to come back full-time. Different approaches work for different people, and Becky will have to decide what feels right for her. The legacy implications are interesting to consider as well. Becky Lynch is already a Hall of Famer whenever she decides to hang up her boots. Nothing about this pregnancy changes that. But how she's remembered and where she ranks in all-time conversations could be affected by having her prime years interrupted twice by pregnancies. That's not fair, but it's how legacy discussions work. People compare total championship reigns, total WrestleMania main events, longevity at the top, and absences create gaps in those resumes that are held against performers in retrospective analyses. Becky's peak might have been the highest peak any woman has ever reached in WWE, but peaks don't last forever and time away accelerates the decline when you return. What I'm most curious about is whether Becky comes back after the second pregnancy with the same fire and commitment she had before. The first time she came back hungry to prove herself again and reclaim her spot. Will she have that same hunger after a second extended absence? Or will priorities shift and family become more important than wrestling, which would be completely understandable but would also probably mean the end of Becky Lynch as a full-time top-level performer? We won't know until it happens, and she might not even know yet how she'll feel 18 months from now. The announcement itself was handled well from a production standpoint. Letting Becky deliver the news herself in her own words rather than having it leaked online or announced via press release gave her control over her own narrative and allowed fans to hear it directly from her. The emotional weight of that moment came through and will be remembered as a significant moment in WWE history regardless of how everything else plays out. The immediate aftermath has been interesting to observe, with wrestlers and fans processing this news in real time on social media. There's been an outpouring of support mixed with disappointment mixed with speculation about what comes next. Some people are already fantasy booking Becky's return and who she should feud with when she comes back. Others are discussing who should take her spot in the women's division hierarchy. Some are criticizing WWE's maternity leave policies, even though this doesn't seem to be a WWE problem specifically but rather a general societal issue about how pregnancy affects women's careers across all industries. Where we go from here is uncertain, and that uncertainty is part of what makes this announcement so impactful and emotional. We don't know when Becky will be back. We don't know if she'll be back at the same level. We don't know how the women's division will look when she returns. We don't know if WWE will successfully create new stars in her absence or if they'll struggle without her. All we know for certain is that right now, in this moment, we're losing one of the greatest to ever do it, and that loss is going to be felt deeply by everyone who loves women's wrestling. So drop your thoughts in the comments and please be respectful. Tell me how you think WWE should handle the women's division without Becky. Tell me who you think should be elevated to fill the void she's leaving. Tell me your favorite Becky Lynch moment or match. Tell me whether you think she'll come back from this second pregnancy or if this might be the beginning of the end of her in-ring career. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because we're going to be covering every development as the women's division adapts to life without the man. Becky Lynch is pregnant, she's stepping away, and wrestling just got a lot less interesting for the next year or more.